how to use the facilities money. But I just wanted to say, when you get to the incremental things that we think a shelter for the kitchen and the bathroom and the nature area would be material enhancements for the programs that all the kids are going to these days. This year we've been lucky. The Native American Studies has not had any rain, and it looks like first Thanksgiving may get through. We've got 3 of the schools will be doing their programs in the next 8 days. But when it does rain, it does disrupt the kitchen area, which was making the food and eating it is one of the major things that the kids like, and the rain obviously gets in the way. And then we have obviously the toilet marches to the toilets in the gym. Just take time to organize and take a lot of kids out from the program, and if there's a toilet in the facility, you could be, where the kids could stay there, and just the ones that need it could use it, could still be watched. So when the time's appropriate, we'll be back, but thank you very much for this. And if, like I said, there's 3 first Thanksgivings in the next 8 days. If anybody would like to come, we'd love to have visitors. It really can be magic. I mean, watching the kids sit there and I saw them sit still for an hour to hear about grinding corn. Because there's a lot to it, and as the naturalist, as Doris pointed out, you know, they didn't let the kids do it because it was too important. And so now they're going to let them, and she has things like, you know, you don't heat the stones together because it might make pieces into the mush, but what you see, you don't let the stones talk. And she was sitting there demonstrating and made a little clink, and the kids were all. So it's very magical. So if anybody would like to come for the first Thanksgivings, we got 3 of them. One tomorrow, one Monday, and I think one the next Friday. Thank you.
Other comments from the board?
Hi, I'm Wendy Bond. I was the parent rep on the facilities committee last year about this time, representing OIS. And in anticipation of this meeting, I met with Michael Randall to just see where they were at in terms of priorities for the OIS campus. And I submitted via email to all of you board members a list of sort of items that have been reprioritized. And they're very similar to what we discussed earlier, but a year has passed, and so some new items have come up as a higher priority than others. So I would draw your attention to the top 6 mainly. And these are prioritized by the administration with based on the current circumstances, needs, and how realistic they were in terms of being accomplished sooner rather than later. So air conditioning to the classrooms, that was a high priority last year as well. Add solar power on campus. More tables at kennel. This has always been an issue, and crowding at lunchtime. Repair uneven cement walkways and cracks in the asphalt. And then bleachers, actually top 6, the bleachers have been since deemed unsafe, and so they're not usable. So that's a new issue that's come up since last year. And then finally, remodel the library, which really was kind of lower on the list originally, has come up a little bit in priority. And what they're hoping for there is an area there that people can meet, that's more open, larger groups can meet. And there's no estimate for that amount, but it's more of a furniture moving bookcases issue than a major structural issue, as my understanding. So that's the information I have from Michael Randall, and the other ones are listed on there as well.
Thank you, Wayne. Other comments from the public?
Hi, my name is Adam Miller. I'm a science teacher from OIS. I also do solar consulting on the side as well. In reading the TerraVerde report and the NEM report prior to that, there is a way to, well, let me back up. AC, air conditioning, solar, And efficiency upgrades make a lot more sense if you consider them as a package. And they provide synergies and the ability to offset costs. So briefly, if you take Prop 39 funds for efficiency projects, you can fall below the $200,000 threshold that would require fire alarm upgrades. So that whole cost of the fire alarms can be avoided. The other approach, in addition to that, one can skip the most expensive air conditioning projects that require any roofing or structural upgrades. If you also take a look at skipping the gyms and the MPRs at each of the sites, and finally fold electrical upgrades into a solar project, and I sent out an email previously, if the solar is funded through a power purchase agreement, and there's many different ways that can be structured, but you can offset about $1 million worth of the electrical upgrades when it's incorporated into solar. So using TerraVerde's report and sort of extrapolating and taking rough orders of magnitude, it would, and I can at some other point walk through the calculations, but solar at all the sites would be about $2.5 million, would pay for itself in 10 to 12 years. And that's because it's more expensive when you fold in the electrical upgrades. And the AC could be done for about $2.4 million. So I know as you consider all the facilities, there are many, many different ways to look at the costs and look at the prices. But there's a very precise surgical way in which this can be done that would actually minimize the costs and make it be much more affordable to the district. Without looking at a surgical approach to this, I think at first glance the costs may appear to be overwhelming. So as you go through this, and I'm sure Rick from TerraVerde can guide you through that very precise narrow path that it takes. But you need to be aware that the path is there, that it can be done. But it has to be done intelligently and with planning.
Any other comments from the public? Thank you. We have one action item for tonight, the 2013-14 Parcel Tax Independent Citizens Oversight Committee appointment. Dr. Jackman? Or Orinda?
So at the last board meeting, the board appointed members to the committee. Subsequent to that meeting, we actually hired one of the committee members to work for OUSD, who is now not independent and can no longer serve on the committee. So there was one other returning committee member who had expressed an interest in continuing to participate on the committee, Mike Robinson. And so therefore we're putting forth his name in order to be appointed to the committee as a returning member and replacing Shauna Simmons, who thankfully got a job with the district. It's not a bad thing, but now she can no longer serve on the committee.
Questions from the board? Any further discussion or?
Please don't hire one of the other ones. Unless it's just down.
action item A, 2013-14 Parcel Tax Independent Citizens Oversight Committee appointment.
Do we need
Of
any,
Mike Robinson.
we need any public comment?
Who's part of that other
Well, prior,
Rule.
fair enough. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That was unanimous. Okay, and now we have the vote of our meeting, is the study session on facilities. We have TerraVerde here giving us a update. We're gonna start with that. We'll follow that with an update from district staff on current state of facilities and financial, and then we will follow that up with some discussion on energy and discussion on portables and whatever other facility we may want to get to. So.
Good evening, everyone. Rick Brown. Tonight, I'm going to start just kind of giving a little background, how we got here from what we, some of the information that we've shared before. Talk about then digging more specifically into the financials associated with the various different projects that we've been asked to look into. Speak a little bit about, well, we're not making any decisions about procurement path, layout, some of the options, should you decide to go forward, the procurement issues, and then open for discussion next steps. At the last meeting where I spoke, the October 13th meeting, we presented the draft Prop 39 expenditure plan, the temperature study, the AC project rough order magnitude cost estimate, and again, some estimates around solar PV, the pro formas associated with doing solar, both with and without the AC being implemented, because of course, adding AC is going to add significantly to the electrical load at the district. The board provided direction to complete the Prop 39 analysis and submit the application and expenditure plan, and that was done last week, and I can report that we've had initial inquiry from the staff person assigned from the CEC, the California Energy Commission, and he had one question, and it was very minor, so I'm assuming we'll get approval relatively quickly, because he seemed pretty comfortable with the analysis that we provided. So we'll know. Generally, it's taken 30 to 45 days to get approval. We'll see how that goes. You also provided direction on us to update and refine the rough order magnitude cost analysis. What we had presented last time was just based on a walkthrough of 2 of the sites. We went back and walked through all the sites and have come up with a more refined analysis of the cost. I will say it is a conservative analysis because we like to start there anyway. And then to provide information for this workshop. We met with district leadership to review this information, and were directed to provide, in addition to what we had done previously, an analysis on the replacement of the OIS multi-purpose room heating unit, and also to provide an analysis on the retrofit of the exterior parking lot lights around the district with LED fixtures, and then explore the addition of boiler replacement at 3 sites to the Prop 39 program, which we subsequently did and included in the Prop 39 program because there was sufficient funds still there to do that. It was a good project from a cost-benefit standpoint. So I know this is too small for everybody to see. I think there were copies around, but just to say this is the overall plan that was submitted, and it indicates that the various measures that we went through at the last meeting, in addition to the boiler replacement at 3 of the sites. So that funding authorization should come through, as I said, 30 to 45 days. Again, what will be approved is, quote unquote, a 5-year plan. The total allocation that we're estimating you'll receive of $420,000 over the 5 years. The 2/5 of that, or 40% of that, has already been appropriated by the legislature. So you will be, once this is approved, within about 3 to 4 months of approval to actually receive the cash from the Department of Education for your first 2 years allocation. And then in the subsequent years, every year, you'll receive the other 20% over the next 3 years. In terms of the AC mechanical project, again, these are the more updated numbers for the overall AC project. As you'll see on the right-hand side, again, it's a little hard to see there, but the overall project we estimate, including the NPR replacement, heating unit replacement, about $5.232 million. That's without the fire alarm system. The fire alarm system, as we discussed last time, that subtotal could be as much as $2.8 million. I want to update you on, we did some inquiries with the Department of State Architect, who makes the determination here. Because if the funding for this project is local funds, it doesn't trigger the requirement that if you're using state funds, basically if it's any more than $200,000, you have to make required upgrades. However, it is at the discretion of the Department of State Architect, and that discretion is based on the evaluation of the communication system that you have now around fire. So we haven't had an independent, inspector come and look at your system to say that for sure you're going to get that discretionary approval. But that would be the next step if you go forward with this project, to determine, or at least the next step in doing the scoping of this project, determine whether we think we can get that discretionary approval. That is it's a process where there's a back and forth, let's put it that way, to get to that point. The other factor, though, is that what DSA staff told us, quote unquote off the record, is that the state fire marshal is working on new rules that would basically take away the discretion. That if we really want to have that option, we got to get this done in the next 10 months, because he's going to be releasing those rules apparently, sometime towards the end of next summer. So, one recommendation would be to get an evaluation to see whether it is likely you would get that discretionary approval, if that's what you want to do, to see whether this cost is going to be associated with this upgrade or not.
How far along in the process would you have to go to get to that DSA approval?
I think it's one of those things where we wouldn't want to do it right away. You wouldn't want to spend a lot of money or time on design issues. We know enough about what the future rules are, or the non-discretion. This is the cost of this is the rough order of magnitude cost if we did not get that approval. So really what we need to do now is have somebody who, have one of the folks from our engineering team, do the assessment of the system as it is and submit a informal request for, to get a clear sense of, is this likely you're going to get that approval? If you get that informal thumbs up, then, it'd be worth it to do the formal submittals. This could be something, with ESA you can never predict how long it's going to take to get these approvals, but it should be a relatively quick turnaround, meaning anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. So we also looked at the exterior lights and, for retrofitting to LEDs, and we estimate there that the cost would be somewhere in the range of $76,000, with annual savings around $3,300. And then finally, this is the summary of more detailed information that we presented last time. We looked at 3 scenarios: the PPA scenario, a 60% debt, 40% cash scenario, and 100% cash scenario. And what you see is what the savings, that chart doesn't look as good on this screen as it did when I put this together, so let me see if I can make that a little bit. What you can't see in the far right bottom corner is without AC, about 7.822 million for that, under that 128, 100% cash scenario. So this was what we presented previously, but I just wanted to have it summarized for you. And then, in terms of the overall count and amount, if we go from left to right, we've got the energy conservation measures that were included in the Prop 39 program, where we're estimating a total capital appropriation over the 5 years of $420,000. The first, we applied for about $404,000 worth of measures right now that will generate around $36,000 a year in energy savings. And those will effectively go up as PG&E rates go up, because it's not exactly savings, you're avoiding increase in costs. But that's the year one estimate. The air conditioning mechanical project, again, we haven't determined a capital source, but depending on, as we discussed, whether the fire alarm requirements are there or not, it's anywhere from 5.2 to 8.2 million. Again, no energy savings associated with this project, you're adding load. I'm sorry about how this turned out. It did not look this way on my PowerPoint, something between PC and Mac. I guess there's still issues there. But the capital source for the exterior lights is to be determined. There is a little bit of Prop 39 money still available, about $16,000 that we didn't allocate. You could conceivably allocate some of that to the exterior light project. That project would qualify. But again, that cost is $76,000, savings of $3,300. And then we have the three different scenarios, and I just presented in this summary the scenario, what the savings would be with AC, with offsetting that larger load. And you can see where that comes down. Obviously, under the PPA, there is no capital cost. That's, a third-party provider of that capital. Now, in terms of that previous, Adam's previous comment, you can put all kinds of costs into the PPA contract, for example, electrical infrastructure costs, but be aware that's going to be reflected in the PPA price that you get later on, because effectively you're financing that project, those additional costs, with the PPA provider's capital source. So it means that your savings would go down, effectively, because adding that infrastructure cost would mean more money had to be generated by the PPA to cover that cost. So those savings would go down if you added those measures, but that is an option. Again, because under IRS rules, though, you can't just throw electrical infrastructure costs that are not associated with the solar project, because one of the ways that the PPA provider gets their return is through what's called the federal investment tax credit. And they get a 30% tax credit on the infrastructure costs that they pay for. But the IRS only allows that for costs that are directly associated with the project. So it can only be, no PPA provider would do this unless it was clear that those infrastructure costs were eligible for that ITC. Make sense? Okay. And then we have the scenario with the 60% debt and 40% cash. And then we have the, and so I show there, and again, the costs I'm showing for the solar are very, very rough, probably pretty conservative. But overall, if you were, we believe that, the range of costs is going to be somewhere in the $4 million to do the optimal sizing to offset as much of your load to get the best annual savings. And as you see, it goes up as your amount of cash versus your amount of debt, because you don't have a financing cost in that case. So that savings goes up to $247,000 under the scenario with 100% cash. So, what you get to in the end is if you were doing the overall project, you can see what the total capital required there would be. With the fire safety, $12.9 million. without the fire safety, about 9.9 million. So that's kind of the big picture. In terms of the procurement process, there's something called Government Code 4217 that allows public agencies, including schools, to procure energy projects without a formal hard bid process, as long as there's a finding, an analysis, that projects will result in energy and cost savings. The pro forma that we developed for you for the Prop 39, for the exterior lights, for the solar project, all qualify as those kinds of findings. The benefit is that it allows for a value engineering process of any selected proposals and an open book negotiated final contract. You're not stuck with, here's the bids, take the low bid, that's it. You can take proposals and then do value engineering, meaning really open book the pricing of all the different components and have from your side of the table a process where you get the various vendors and bidders to justify their costs and get to the best value. However, expenditure Prop 39 funds cannot occur without some sort of bid process. Sole source is prohibited. So we've used the modified process where we still use the flexibility of 4217, providing a detailed set of performance, operational, and construction specs in the bid process, but still doing competitive bidding, not just doing this value engineering open book, negotiating with one vendor. You do a competitive process, you pick your preferred vendor, then you go to that value engineering, and if you don't get to where you need to get to, you go to the next vendor. So this can be used for the energy conservation and solar projects, but because the AC mechanical exterior light project is on the cusp, because the savings are there, you could conceivably use 4217. Because the savings are relatively low to the project cost, it might be better to do that one as a more formal bid process. But the AC mechanical, for sure, you can't do 4217 because there's no energy savings. So you have to do a more formal bid process for that project. Okay? So I just wanted to make clear what the different options were given the different projects in terms of how the procurement would need to occur. So in terms of next steps, basically consider moving forward with the full development of the AC mechanical project. Obviously, as we were discussing, the very first step I would recommend is to get a firmer position around whether or not you are going to be required to do the fire safety upgrades before you go full in. You want to know what you're in for there. The exterior light project and the solar project. And then the other next step is upon CEC approval of the district's Prop 39 plan, prepare the bid specs, RFP, and contract documents, and get started on those projects. So that's my overview. I'm glad to answer any questions, dig into any of the numbers as you see fit.
Okay, questions to the board?
I'll go ahead and kick them off. So the cost savings, that was the annual cost savings columns for these returns. Is that just based on exactly what the district's paying right now, or is that?
Yes. So we take as a baseline your last 12 months of energy costs. We look at going from the equipment that you have today to the new equipment, what the standards are in terms of their energy use, and we calculate what those savings would be.
Can you flip that a little bit,
Sure.
and instead of giving us an annual cost savings, tell us, okay, this is how much it will cost you every year. If we did a PPA, we'd have the least
Right.
amount plus whatever electricity we're still paying for. What would that number be compared to what we
Sure.
are paying this year? And same with the other two options.
So
And
I'll start with AC.
Okay.
Or do you want to do without AC?
then, with, it's fine.
Okay.
And we would like to see both, I guess.
Sure. So, under the PPA model, effectively, what you're paying right now for your electricity across the district is about $288,000. Okay? What you would be paying effectively under the PPA model that we're showing, and it could be better than that. If you added cost to it, it would be a little bit less, but it would be about $215,000. That's where you get the $72,000 in savings. Okay?
And is that just the lease, or that's assuming a lease payment of a certain amount
This
plus
is yeah, it's not,
electricity?
just to be, not to be too technical, it's not actually a lease payment. The PPA payment is a
Okay,
contract for a power purchase, yeah.
I get that.
But you're not
Because you're
getting,
paying a monthly amount.
you're paying a monthly amount, that's right.
Right,
And
and
you're
you're
paying-
still paying some amount of money for electricity because you're
Well-
not covering 100%.
Well, actually, we have sized, the way we've sized it is to basically about 98, 99%.
Okay, so this is assuming almost a zero electricity
PG&E bill,
bill,
that's right.
PG&E bill.
Right. Under, uniquely in PG&E territory, there is a tariff called A6 that you would switch to when you did solar that has no fixed charges, no demand charges. So if you are able to offset all of your bill, and the reason we say 98, 99% is the fudge factor, right? There are going to be
Okay.
certain years when you're going to actually produce a little bit more and pay nothing. And there'll be other years because of weather issues or fire issues, you know, the quality of the air, that your panels will produce, say, 98% of bill credit offset, and so you'll pay a little bit.
And over time, as your energy, as electricity costs increase, but your solar panels are degrading over
Right,
time,
that's
so.
right. So what we show in the
You
pro
show
forma,
less
yeah,
efficiency
we
in
show the
pro forma.
degrading of the panels at 0.75% a year, which is actually higher than what your warranty allows, just to be conservative, because these panels are warranted to produce a 80% after 25 years. So, if they don't produce that amount, then you have a warranty claim. So you're losing a little bit of production, but you're also having your PG&E rates go up, so your effective savings are going up. Your production is going down slower than your PG&E rate is going up, in terms of the model as we're projecting it. But there is also, in this model, your PPA rate is going up. Again, you can negotiate a PPA where you have a 0% escalator on your PPA rate, but then your starting PPA cost is going to be higher. They work in tandem. So if you did the PPA where you're not putting any capital in, that's kind of how the dynamic works.
Okay. And then under the other two options.
Right.
we would-
So, again, it's the same thing in the sense that, 280,000 is your annual bill. When you're owning it, you have operating costs, right?
Mhm.
And if you're owning it through financing, you have operating costs and financing costs. So under the 40-60 scenario, okay, we show operating costs in year one of about $40,000, right? And we show financing cost of about $77,000. So your benefit after that is $170,000. You're paying effectively you're saving $170,000 as opposed to $72,000. You're going down from a bill of $280,000 to a bill of about $110,000. So that your annual cost is that operating cost of $40,000 and your debt service is $77,000. Now that doesn't take into account the cash that you put in, right? And we show here over time you getting that cash back. And you can do an NPV analysis if that's something that you want, but your capital cost to finance that 40% is significantly less than what a PPA provider can get. That's why that's part of the difference. And part of the difference is they're financing the whole thing. I'm showing a scenario here where you're only financing 60% of the project, right? And then the third model, you're effectively capitalizing an operating cost, right? You're taking 100% cash and you're paying for your power forever, effectively. And you do still have those operating costs, right, of about $40,000 a year. So that's why you're in a situation where your savings are $247,000 as opposed to the entire electricity bill.
And then
And I can show you, if you're interested, we've been working with districts for a number of years and can show you the actuals, how this has actually turned out. We have districts that are on PPAs, we've had districts that are doing the 40/60, 20/80, all cash. And you can see over the years how this actually works.
So do the operating costs tend to increase over time, or do they peak with like, you have to
Yeah,
replace
it
an
actually-
inverter or something?
Yeah,
or you're like-
yeah, so that's very, very good question. So the way we model it is, the O&M is generally a little bit higher in the first 2 or 3 years because there's a lot more maintenance type activities to get the systems debugged. There's always stuff that happens for whatever reason in the first 2 or 3 years. Once those things are debugged, the operating costs can come down. Now, somewhere around, and again, the industry has been around a while, but not quite long, but somewhere around year 15, 16, 17, you're starting to have to do a little bit more maintenance, particularly on your inverters, because you want to keep them going as long as possible. But as you see in the pro forma, when you own the system, we actually put in a cost of replacing the inverters as of year 20. Because you can buy a 20-year warranty. The standard in California, the requirement actually under the law, is at least a 10-year warranty on the inverters. But we recommend a 20-year because the additional cost of that 20-year definitely pays for itself. But we show in the pro forma, you're going to have to pay, you're going to have to replace that But you could, if you maintain it properly, it could last even longer. Now, just today, the CPUC came out with new rules that are going to require an upgrade to inverters all across California as of the end of 2015. And the upgrade is to make them what are called smart inverters. What smart inverters are inverters that not only can turn your power from your solar and send it into the system and protect you in terms of backfeed and stuff like that, but inverters that can communicate with the grid, such that as the usefulness of demand response of the PG&E, for example, wanting to be able to buy capacity from you, maybe at higher rates at certain times, they'll be able to communicate with you and you'll have this arbitrage opportunity to actually make even more money. But that's sort of the next wave. But what I'm suggesting, we were talking about this today in the office, the projects that we're doing right now, we have about 8 megawatts that we're in the process of constructing. We're going to spec to the smart inverters because it's coming anyway. And it's something that will be useful beyond that. But maybe I'm going down a rabbit hole. The point is, inverters are the big maintenance item. The panels themselves, in this area here, which is a relatively urban area, you maybe only need to wash once a year, and maybe not at all. If the rains come at the right time, if you can get a nice rain, for example, in the end of March, beginning of April, a couple weeks before your summer peak pricing comes in, you're good for 3 or 4 months. And then we have algorithms to figure out, somewhere around July, August, does it make sense to do a wash? Is the cost of the wash going to get you a return in terms of the benefit and increased production? Maybe, maybe not. But the big maintenance item is the inverters.
So I guess the question on operating costs.
Sure.
Is the operating cost, in my mind, is that a purchase that's within your 100% cash or whichever scenario? Because if you're purchasing a warranty and you're commissioning these things and you're starting them up and you're, isn't that part of the package that you then get the efficiency out of? Don't you buy that performance when you buy it?
Again, it depends on your philosophy around O&M. We are our TerraVerde's particular philosophy is, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And so we do, we as part of our monitoring, and we do this, for the first couple of years as part of our, if you do the solar with us, we will do that monitoring, but we jump at the early issues, and they're always early issues, as I said. We do an annual preventive maintenance, inspection and repair. So yes, the systems are warranted, but they're not just, you don't just turn them on and then you walk away.
No, and I get that. I guess what I'm used to though is, especially complicated mechanical systems or otherwise, they're within the warranty. They're maintained. There's a startup process. There's witness, third party, whatever you need to commission it, make sure things are properly, and there's a check-in at least a year for the whether it's a 10-year term or longer, and I'd say even to go to less technical things like roofing, same application in terms of warranty maintenance and an
You
inspection by someone to verify that it's actually being,
Right.
maintained. So
So,
I'm just curious how the 40,000,
right.
I would think that in
You
some
can-
cases, you're
yeah.
basically buying that when you buy.
It really, again, I'd say the same thing. When you're buying the system, you're buying a 25-year warranty on panels, 20-year warranty if you go on the inverter, and a 10-year workmanship warranty by the firm that you contracted with to build the system. That's all by state law. You have to have those minimums. Now, maybe they'll do all the things, because they don't want to have to pay on warranty claims, maybe they'll do a level of inspection and a level of preventive maintenance that, protects you. Our personal philosophy is we want to do a little bit more. We think it's worth investing that extra money. But
So the
it's
40
not
is
a-
outside of the vendor that you purchased?
That's right, that's outside the limit, yeah.
And it's not internal within the district either?
I mean, we've had districts that after 2 or 3 years, with a little bit of training, have been able to take over some of those functions, but it's pretty specialized.
Sure, I'm just,
So,
yeah.
it just depends on the bigger districts, no offense, who have full-time, electricians and so forth, certified,
Or newer facilities with all kinds of
Right.
management systems and,
Right.
yeah.
are more likely to do that. Smaller districts, as Jim said, we don't have the capacity, we'll take a third party we'll hire a third party to do that. It's not a requirement, but it's a strong recommendation.
So is commissioning part of that?
Commissioning is absolutely, yes, that is part of the construction standard construction.
So it's not within the
No,
40 or
but
whatever
again,
it amounts
yeah,
to?
no, commissioning, you absolutely, yeah. And the way the contracts we put in, we don't pay the last, as part of the punch list, we don't pay the last 10% until the commissioning and testing.
Right, the retention on the.
The typical is 5%, we're able to put a little bit more in because it's not exactly retention, you have to perform the commissioning to get to that.
Is there a performance evaluation in terms of payment too? I mean, to make sure the system's achieving, outside of the commissioning, I mean, is that?
You mean
is
beyond that first year?
One thing, it's working and everything's
Yes.
great, that's wonderful, but actually hitting a target, is that part of the?
You can get that, it's pretty expensive. In the PPA model, it's less expensive because remember,
That's
the
their
PPA
incentive, yeah.
provider, that's their incentive, right? In the construction model, you can buy that, it's pretty expensive, and the system has been designed and built and commissioned properly, you're not really buying much. These systems, this is not a new technology anymore. These are very robust. And if you've got the right components, you built it properly, it's been inspected, and
Well,
you're not,
yeah,
you're
the
not getting
companies
much.
don't want their name out there not performing
Right.
anyway. 'Cause
Right.
It's just,
Which then leads to, in your procurement process, as part of your evaluation of the vendors, price is one thing, right? And then financial wherewithal to back up the warranties, and
yeah, that they'll be here in 10 years.
Right. that's part of the equation. Yeah. So as I said, we're pretty conservative about this stuff. We think these are assets that are valuable for the long term, and therefore you want to do that ounce of prevention to keep them performing over the long term. For Maureen, I'm doing a workshop at the CBO Symposium next week on asset management, so please come to my workshop.
Any final questions from the board?
I have one
Yeah.
lighting one.
Yeah.
So on the exterior lighting spreadsheet, 3,300 yearly savings on the 76,000, I mean, it's
Yeah.
20 plus
Yeah.
a year type
Yeah.
of thing, but can you comment so that everyone understands the longevity of the fixtures that we'd be swapping with? So
Yeah, I mean.
we all change bulbs a lot quicker than 20 years typically at home, so.
Yeah. You can't get a 20-year warranty on these things. You can maybe get a 10-year, but the LED, the current generation of LEDs, generally, if you talk to folks like the CEC, California Energy Commission, the major distributors and manufacturers, 20 years is seen as a pretty standard life of this stuff. Again, that's depending on usage, right? Because it's really number of hours And so if you leave them on for 18 hours a day, it's not gonna be 20 years. If you leave them on the sort of typical schedule, then 20 years. So this isn't a slam dunk from a payback standpoint, as you can see.
Right.
What I don't show here is there are some rebates that you can get on this stuff that I should have included here, and I don't have that number in my head. It's not gonna move the needle hugely, but it helps.
What is the 3,300 amount to in terms of usage? Is that just a
That's
ballpark?
that number to the left, it's 23,000 kilowatt hours a year. So where it says energy savings.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So in terms of, would we see, or would a recommendation be to lower that usage as well? You know, are you calculating off of our current usage, or you just took a,
We took a standard, yeah, we didn't actually look, we don't.
because we don't have it metered right now
Yeah,
anyway.
exactly, so we couldn't really, break it out. We just kind of took a standard, so it could be, the savings could be a little bit higher, depending on how that matches up. We can do that next level, getting more information about what the, and it would clearly make sense to, have these on timers or on, some kind of control.
Control cells or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, photo cell, yeah.
Sarah, do you have a question?
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. Earlier, when you first started presenting this, you were talking about the Prop 39 application that had been submitted, and we should hear back soon. I'm kind of trying to think out the timeline, if we want to
Sure.
proceed ahead with all these things.
Mhm.
We need to get that approval, but I don't think we have to wait for that before we ask about getting a discretionary approval about the
Right,
fire.
oh yeah, Prop 39 is completely separate.
Separate.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's on a completely separate track, yeah.
Okay, so we wait for that, but then we don't wait. And then, say we wanted to consider the whole scoping of the air conditioning and the solar, because it does make sense to do it together, and yet we don't want to do the fire.
Right.
So we could try to get the discretionary approval.
The solar will not trigger, by the way, I just want to be clear, the solar would not trigger the fire alarm issue.
Right,
Yeah, it's
just the air conditioning
yeah.
portion of it, yeah. Okay,
so that's where you have to get the approval, yeah.
right, and then, let's see, will that take a while? I forget, you said 4 to 6 weeks, I think.
Could be faster, could be longer, I'm giving you the mid-range estimate, because part of the problem is the time of year.
And then
You don't know who to talk to?
assuming we
I
do
can tell
that,
you built a DSA.
yeah. So assuming
Hodgepodge, yeah.
we're proceeding, trying to get that
Yeah.
approval
Yeah.
and trying to scope out the project
Right.
further, then if we are on this track of trying to make this happen, and yet if we want to make it happen, we hope that it would happen this summer, would it come back to us as a board, I mean, just theoretically, I know there's a lot of steps here, but it would come back to us, in a month or 2 or 3, or what, before, to let us know where we are, and are we proceeding, or what, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand
Yeah, no,
the
it's,
process.
yeah, so we've done some preliminary schedule estimates, and I haven't shared that because we haven't gotten to that place yet, but to get this done by the end of next summer, it's a race. And I can break it down, unfortunately I don't have it on my computer, but effectively, you need to,
Right, you said that last time we
yeah,
were here.
yeah. I mean,
In October.
and the big problem is, going back to what Tyson was raising, is DSA approval. We can get this, there's the discretionary issue around fire alarm safety, but then there's the plans themselves for the project that have to go to DSA. And,
Does it all have to go together?
no, what would go together, meaning the AC
The air
project?
conditioning and the solar.
No,
then
they're
there's the
completely
energy
separate,
efficiencies.
completely separate track. The
Okay.
solar, frankly, can move really quickly for the very simple reason that we probably, for the most part, be doing not rooftop solar, but shade structure solar. And shade structures have the advantage, and this is one of the reasons why pretty much all schools are doing this now, is you have what are called pre-check designs. You have designs that the DSA has already approved, and you just have to put in that design and you basically get an over-the-counter, which by the way means 3 weeks, doesn't mean you go there one day and you get it the next day. But 3 weeks at
Expedited.
DSA is
It's pretty good.
pretty good. We put together a schedule, and it's aggressive, where if you guys, I mean, literally we have here, if you approved going forward with, bringing on an architect to, do the design next week, we could, and we got through DSA, the big piece is DSA. We got through DSA in 12 weeks, which is pretty aggressive. And we were able to do, by using and it's not, I wouldn't always recommend this because it's not necessarily what's needed here, but doing a leaseback where you have a vendor who basically leans forward around procurement, getting supply. We think you could get it done by the end of August. But if I sat down with you and went through each of the 8 or 9 steps, they're all pretty aggressive. Everything else I've shown you up to now is conservative. The schedule is pretty aggressive. So yes, it could be done. And the other piece is, if you can pay a little bit extra to do off-hours work, for example, right? Weekend work, evening work, it costs a little bit more, but you can move more quickly. So there are ways of getting there. If your primary requirement is, besides cost, getting it done by the end of next summer, there is a path. But that path probably goes away if you haven't approved somebody to get started on design by the end of this month. Anytime past the end of this month, it's not going to happen by the end of next summer. It's just, the lead
This
times
month
are just...
being November.
Huh?
You mean November?
November, yeah.
Okay, and when you're talking about this, you're talking about the AC and the solar?
No,
No.
no, solar,
just
I'm purely talking about AC.
the AC.
Solar,
Okay,
solar is,
isn't as much.
no, because you can do solar,
Mhm.
it's disruptive, but it's not disruptive to classrooms.
Mhm.
Whereas AC, you gotta work around classroom time. That's part of the issue.
Okay.
Solar, the disruption is your parking areas. You have to close down half your parking area for a period of time, and you put out lots of notices to people, and people figure it out. And there's about a 4 to 8 week period when you're inconvenienced. But
Right.
because you have the pre-check, and because solar, you can work a full work day getting it done, it moves pretty quickly.
Right. So
You
the
can have
other
your
part,
solar done, if you decide in the next month to go ahead with solar, you can be done by May, June.
Mhm. Okay.
And you
It's
want
not
to try to
gonna
do
be
that
out of
because you get all those great credits in the summer.
Mhm.
But again, over the long term, it's all that.
Right, and the other part about air conditioning, and I want my fellow board members to realize, I'm not for doing the whole thing that is in here, because it includes the gyms and, everything, and I think we need to not include the gyms. I think that would not make sense. The NPRs and, that's why I'm asking, what's the timeline? Because I would think you would scope out the project and then
Yes.
have somebody okay it, because you
Yeah.
can't just say.
No, this is a,
"Well,
this is a
Yeah.
high level
Yeah, this
project
is way too
description.
expensive.
This
I
needs to
would
be
want-
scoped
Yeah, a
much more
modified,
precisely.
very modified version, so that we're just talking about the classrooms or spaces that people use all the time, not the gym and the NPR. Okay, that's enough for the moment.
Well, how much of a cost savings would it be not to do multipurpose rooms?
I'm sorry, I can't,
Still most of
I
the
can't keep-
buildings.
yeah.
Is still what, Joe?
Well,
Go for it.
the multipurpose rooms are just one small.
I will not, this one I will not buy.
No, it's a huge amount of square foot in a
Well,
gym
It's more
compared to a classroom.
More than 10?
It's just more probably the structural situation of those high bay spaces, you got
Well, they're really high ceilings and big spaces, but
there's a lot of tonnage AC wise to
Yeah.
cool the floor of that area in a gym when it's that high.
Any more questions for?
I guess I had one other one, it's a small,
Actually, just to be clear, we did not, we included the gym at some sites and not at others, so, I I really don't like to do, what, I gave you the sort of total package kind of view of this. What I would like to do is, you know, we need to get you to the next iteration, we need to have a scoping, okay, the details. If you're gonna go forward, then, you know, we need to do this not as a, being kind of giving you this big picture stuff, but, you know, the engineers, architects, sitting down with your staff, with, if you have a committee, whatever, to really dig into what is the specific scope, and then we can come to better estimates also. It's just, this is not, I'm not prepared to get down to that detail with this kind of discussion, I'm sorry. I wish I could answer your questions.
So one question about the small remaining balance there, the 16,408.
Yeah.
Can that be spent on things like weatherizing of doors and windows? And
Now, again, those items have very low SIRs. So you have the
totally agree.
ratio
We
of,
just have some very leaky doors and windows.
the ratio of district cash and that would have to be to the point where you can make it work. But yeah,
But where we have, I
You
mean,
could
what
try-
I'm thinking of is if we have a door that you can push your foot through the bottom of it, there's a certain amount of replacement that's weatherizing and replacing the
Right.
door, so there's kind of some benefits to, you may spend more than 16,
yeah.
but there may be a need to
Right.
spend more than 16 potentially too, so.
It'd be more like if you had 20 doors, right? And you know, you'd have to put in, say, 30,000 plus the 16 to get to an SIR.
And that's why I'm bringing it up, I think we're pretty much
Right.
or maybe even more than 20 doors.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, Rick, thank you so much.
Okay.
We're at 8 o'clock, so I'd like to keep moving.
Okay. Do you need me to stick around, or is this what you need for now?
Chris, what do you mean keep moving? Are we done with this topic, or what do we?
So laid out the topic when we started, so we're gonna keep going. I would love to move our deck, but we've been talking for an hour already. So the next thing, we're gonna hear from Lorraine and Ed on kind of where we are as far as projects that we spent and money that we've spent so far. We got an update on that. And then hopefully, at the end of presentations, we'll have some time left to have some discussion. Sticking away.
Sure.
So, do I just start with the portable portion of it, and go into the projects?
Whichever way you set it.
Okay. So portables, the cost to remove and replace the district-owned portables is $873,167. And this was from Mobile Modular. They came in and looked at each of the portables that we own. And also we had Anaya Construction come in, they do all the portable moving and demolishing. And they gave us the demo and removal costs, the second to the last column. So that's everything, except the only other thing you're gonna have is any inspection fees. We have to have some of the real old ones, we'll have to have them tested for asbestos and have those abated. So there's those type of costs in there. But that's pretty much it, what you see there.
So just to so that's 10 portables that we currently already own, replacing them with new portables.
Right. And then if you wanna upgrade the ones that I have listed as good condition and make them a little nicer, it's also in that cost there. Or you can take that cost out of $112,000 and leave those as that, or excuse me, $65,000.
So did you do any analysis looking at replacing them with a prefab, or is that discussion kind of by the wayside at this point?
We didn't talk about refab last time, so prefab, so
Or we
it
could.
costs money.
Okay, so prefab would add to the cost, but I haven't looked at those numbers in quite a while.
So Ed, can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Because we were just at a site visit at Del Rey. The big portables, the nice kindergarten portables,
Mm-hmm.
are those on this map? Is that K1 and K2?
P1 and P2.
Ah. Great. So that just, those are currently leased and we've got a purchase price with repairs.
Yeah, you're getting the,
Great.
that's the leased ones.
Okay,
This one here is the ones we own.
thank you.
We were bad for it. Any more questions on the owned one? We'll go to the leased one.
Would it be your recommendation to make the upgrades on the good condition portables? Get new paint, new floors, and exterior lighting?
Yes.
Is any level of additional security or anything in any of these required, or in the upgrades?
Not that
Like
I'm aware of.
different lock sets or different windows or?
No, we use our own lock sets, that's all Slade Primus is what we use throughout the district. So we would just pull them out of the ones going away and put them in the ones.
Okay, so no hardware issues at all with any of these?
They can all be locked from the inside. Okay, the current lease portables is the next slide here. That's everything that we lease. And there's, you can see P1 and P2 at the top. We're speaking about Del Rey. So they gave us two costs. They gave us costs if we wanted to buy them in as-is condition with no repairs to them. They also gave us a cost of the repairs to bring them up to a standard to where they would send them out refurbished if they had them. And so the price is there for the repairs, and the third column is the purchase price with the repairs.
So Ed, what would just like on Del Rey P1, they're talking about $2,700. Any, give me a general idea of what they would do to it.
Usually they'll go through, and if there's bad stains in the carpet, they'll replace portions of the carpet, or maybe they're redoing the tack board inside. A lot of times those get torn up with tons of quick pins and staples. Ceiling tiles, sometimes they're replacing those, light diffusers. And in those that have restrooms, so
Yeah.
a lot of times they're changing the tanks and the toilets, whatever needs to be done.
I noticed it's like, just that Sleepy Hollow, room 21's got a much higher number. So these guys obviously went through every single portable in the district and inspected them and made check marks on it.
Yeah, they sent a team out and went through every one.
Can you elaborate on the two that went up since the last time we got this? Was there a reason, was it typos, or was there a reassessment that, in this, numbers 13 and 14, the prices I had prior were $23,550, which could be a typo because it's now $25,350. And then below that was $17,200 is what I remember being versus $19,800. Is there a reason for the uptick?
It was probably because of the,
The repairs
19's one from the county. 19 I just upped because I went and looked at it and I thought it needed a little more repair than what was initially said there. And 24 I think was probably just a typo. I don't think anything changed on that one.
So it's a typo now or a typo then?
24, it looks like you've
Okay.
changed the repairs, the amount of the repairs, from 7,200 to 9,000.
It could have been because I went and looked at the portable at Del Rey and I did add some money on a couple of them.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on the portable?
In guess are there any in a location currently that isn't working for either sites or didn't work from a drainage standpoint or a maintenance standpoint, would be ideally somewhere else, or are there any, I guess, siting issues that are currently had by these portals?
I think Del Rey, the ones that are really close to the classrooms there, I think those could be sited in a different spot and make some people at Del Rey a lot happier. But as far as drainage or flooding or anything like that, we don't have any bad spot. We have some at Del Rey that are in a bad spot to get out, and that's the 17, 19, I believe it's 21, where the computer lab is down there. We have to take the middle one is owned by the county, and so that one has to come out to get the one next to it, because they have to slide down.
Helicopter.
Or crane them, and I didn't want to pay
No,
$8,000 for the portable for a crane.
Get a house mover.
Yeah. So the next slide here is the expenditures that we've done with Fund 40. And these were projects that were approved by the board, some that are in progress, and then other ones that are authorized that haven't been done. And these are costs that are current. The business department went through all of the invoices and this is what it is so far as of a few days ago.
So when we see the estimated total project cost, is that a commitment, or is that just an overall budget that was established, and the invoices paid is a commitment, and then the portion of remaining balance is part of the commitment, or how do we read in terms of, because project cost, I could read that as a straight up commitment, it's booked, or it's a budget, and we're paying it down depending on the line, right? So is that sprinkled depending on the subject, or how do we read that?
On some of the estimated total project costs, we have purchase orders out for the work to be completed, so it's a purchase order amount. The invoices paid to date are just that, those are the actual invoices that are paid. And then the balance remaining would be the difference between what's been estimated and what's been paid. On some of the estimated costs, we may have a purchase order for only a portion of the project if it's a multiple layered project, and the board has authorized a portion of that project to be completed by contract award. And the balance then is an estimate at this point based on working with Joel and Ed on what the balance of that project may cost. So there is some unknown in the work in progress. On the board authorized projects, those are estimates. Those are projects that don't have contracts that have actually been awarded yet.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I'm more looking at the total project cost line as opposed to the project balance remaining, just trying to understand it's simple math going across, but if the total project cost isn't a commitment, it's just a order of magnitude, right, then there's potentially savings that isn't really, call it earmarked or identified on a given line, which may be a good piece of information for this group. Because if it's committed, it's fully committed, right?
Right, and some of it is apples and oranges on here. Some projects have been bid out completely, and so the estimated cost is the actual cost. On others, there's multiple layers, and so part of it is committed. We know exactly how much that amount is. There's a contract out for it, and then the balance to complete the project is based on an estimate. So it's kind of a combination of both of those scenarios that you described.
But for example, like the first item, the retaining wall at Wagner Ranch for the water meter, I assume we've paid all the invoices that have been submitted and we're not expecting to get any more invoices on it.
If there's anything outstanding, on the projects that have been closed out completely, we have zeroed out the remaining balance. So if there is an amount sitting out there, there's a portion of a purchase order, whether it's a retainage amount on the job that's being done, or there's something that hasn't been completed closed out.
And that's what that is, we have notice of completions in, and
Okay.
the back end, so we're home.
I just assumed that one had been done for quite a while, so I assumed it had been closed out, but things move slowly in the,
Construction.
They had to do some repairs on the rubber surfacing, so we didn't,
we held up.
we held up.
Okay, so I guess what I'm getting at is that if this says, and I know Tyson just asked this, but I want to be clear for myself. Under project remaining balance, if there are balances here, which there are very significant ones, in your mind, Lorraine, our plan is that we're gonna pay these.
Correct,
Okay.
at this point.
Great.
And for instance, the one that's in progress, the top one in that section.
Yep.
The reason there's so much left is because we haven't done the staging portion of that project. Any other questions?
Do we have a, timeline on, we're working for, like, if we fly down, especially the authorized projects, is that
Yeah, they
most
may-
of those summertime, or what's the,
yeah,
are there
these-
any that, I know Glorietta, we talked about trying to advance that one, but are any of these other ones, gonna try and hit the winter break?
No, the only one we're doing at the winter break is the restrooms at Bel Air. It's just not a lot of time to do. But these next slides, they have start dates on all the projects, or projected start dates.
Do we have that information on our
Next
agenda?
page, there we go. Segue for you.
So these are our tentative schedules here.
Is there a feasibility to advance doing some of those asbestos removals over the holidays? To get them done? Or is it a long amount of work? Because I know that
The
the
removal
removals of
isn't
the
long.
abatement could happen in a week and a half potentially, right?
Yeah, the removal isn't long, but the air sampling after, and then you have to have the flooring company come in after that, so.
So the due diligence affords a summer.
Yeah. And I'd be really concerned about clearing a room that fast.
Yeah. No, that's why I'm asking it out loud.
And the next page is the rest of the projects, and the last section there is new projects that have come up since we created this. These are some major ones that I put some estimated costs we've come up with for these projects. These are just estimates.
So these aren't on,
These aren't part of the originally approved projects.
And included on here is that replacement of bleachers that was brought up in public comment.
Yeah, if you're familiar with OIS, the two exterior sets, the one on the upper blacktop and the one on the lower field down below.
Yeah.
They're huge sets of bleachers. They can hold an entire PE class in one shot. And they were great when they were made, but now they're not legal anymore. And just to repair them, I'm gonna guess is gonna be around $26,000 to repair all the wood. They're all splintered.
Need to find an Orinda lumber baron.
Yeah, the problem is to replace them with a new one, you want something that's up to code, and they want them right back in that exact location, that's the problem. If you dig the hill out, put a retaining wall in, and make a flat pad, and bring the aluminum ones in. If the school would go with putting, more of a portable style set of bleachers, where we can put them out on the existing blacktop, we can do it for a lot less. But there would be several sets of bleachers, not just one.
But if we were just to repair them, just replace the wood, then we wouldn't have to conform to the new standard?
Right, it would just be a maintenance project, be an awful long maintenance project.
Okay, and can we sub out, can we contract out a maintenance project?
Sure.
Okay.
what do they use them for, like why do they have to be on the hillside?
From what I understand, that's where the PE classes go, and they take roll every day, and they set them all up on there, and then health talks or whatever, they want it all in one spot at the same time.
And is this the same, project that was like the very last project on the year ago list that was the replace with bleachers on lower blacktop? Is that part of that? And this is like an expanded project?
No, I think that one was just a couple of portable bleachers that we did replace. They had old wood ones down there that they moved around all the time, and we put some aluminum ones down there. I think that's it.
Really? That was like we had $100,000
Oh, and
estimate
that's
on
it.
that. I don't
That's
think
it
we ever
then.
approved it.
That's it.
So that's it,
Mhm.
but it's more than just on the lower blacktop?
And now it's on the lower field. They're huge bleach, I think they're 37 feet across.
And if they were moved to a different location, how much would it cost?
I can buy, it'd be significantly less if we could just put them on existing flat blacktop.
But Julie, then there'd be the issue that we'd be taking up valuable blacktop recreational space
Exactly.
for portables.
And on the lower field, we'd be taking out part of the field, and now they're
We
significantly
don't, yeah,
inside.
we don't need a vineyard on the slope, so. It's actually a good idea to have them on an existing slope, because they're out of the way.
So except for that number 25, which maybe was already on our pre-existing projects list, even if it wasn't approved yet, all the rest of these aren't even on our list.
Right.
And we still have a lot of items on our list that we haven't approved, like painting and, the door, have we approved the door replacement?
No.
Doors, windows, some of the windows, right?
Some of the windows you approved, yes, Sleepy Hollow and the Delaware.
But these are the next, what is this, 8 projects, these are the next 8 projects that you would recommend be approved? Is that true, or?
Yes.
So above painting and things like that?
I think so. I think those are a lot more important.
Can you give me the 1-minute version of what you see for field renovations?
Is this all at OAS?
The field renovations?
No, these new
No, it
projects
says,
that
it
are.
says website.
There's a column.
Oh, I guess, yeah, okay, I didn't see that.
So the field renovation, it depends on the site. Gloria needs some more water pressure down the field, so that one's probably gonna be a little more than some of the other ones. But it's mainly filling the holes, reseeding the fields, and top dressing them with topsoil, and getting the irrigation working properly.
But we're not talking about rototilling, ripping up all pipe, all new drainage, all new irrigation.
Not for that price.
Right, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how
It's
much
just
it costs.
renovating what we have, it's not making a new field,
And would we do that, or would you contract that out?
contract it out.
Somebody like Sycamore, or do we still do work with Sycamore, or is that just the city?
I've never used them, I had Pacheco Brothers come out and give me a couple of costs on it.
Oh, good. Okay.
I've never used them either, including energy.
I've heard from a lot of parents they're really unhappy with the fields.
Yeah, the Glorietta field looks pretty bad right now. It has been. So what did you say about the Glorietta field again? You said something about.
It's probably the worst field we have as far as water pressure. It's undersized, the line from the street to the backflow device there. So we only have about 50 pounds of pressure on the side coming in, about 35 out of the heads, and it's just not enough. Type of things that are used on a big field.
So you replace the line?
I think on that one, we have 2 choices. We can either replace the line from the street in, or we can put a expansion tank system there,
Pressurized.
pressurized. We had a couple of those in Richmond, and they really take a lot of maintenance to keep them.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're expensive.
You know, they're
Yeah, we can't bring a line from down the hill.
Yeah.
A cistern?
Just, the verticality would help.
What is this number 27, safety repairs in the school garden at Wagner Ranch?
Wagon Ranch now has a some parents that want to take over the garden there. They've never really had someone strong in the gardening position. So we went and looked at the garden area that's on the other side of the fence there in the nature area near the greenhouse. That's the Wagner Ranch garden. And it's not in too good a shape. It's got some very uneven pavers in there that need to come out and be redone. The old wooden planter boxes are coming apart and nails and screws are sticking out on them. So if we're gonna start putting classes in there on a regular basis, we're gonna do some safety repairs there. There's also some harbors that I don't think they were ever concreted in. You can almost push them over now, so we wanna get that done right away.
Right, I know they were gonna have a work day and have parent volunteers go work in the garden, so I'm just wondering if some of that can be done with parent volunteers rather than, you know, and
I'd
also.
rather not let them touch the overhead harbors or the walkways. They originally put them in and it's.
Part of the problem.
Well, and back when we got an update in May, that was this cute, remember it? We had, you know, it showed about the same amount of projects already authorized, dollar amount wise, but it had our other projects that we hadn't yet approved, you know, at an estimated 5.355. So is that everything else that was on our list at the time, not including, I mean, what didn't that include?
Yeah, I didn't put any of the things on this list that weren't approved on the first go.
Right, but I'm just wondering, I'm just trying to figure out, you know, okay, it says we have 8, how much do we have left? 8.7 left, but I know from looking at our other projects that were considered, you know, priorities the last time we met, that those projects would take up about $5 million. I'm assuming that didn't include solar or air conditioning or portables,
That's right.
is my guess. That was my question. And now we have other projects that are on here.
Another 700.
Right.
Right, and the last one there from the Contra Costa Sewer District, that cathodic protection, the agreement we have with them for that sewer pump and the one at Sleepy Hollow, we own those sewer pump systems and they maintain it for us. And in that agreement, it says any upgrades to those systems, we're on the hook for.
So they're upgrading and we have to pay.
So what's a cathodic, what is it?
They put small currents in the ground and it keeps say this roughly, it keeps everything from rusting at a fast rate. It just slows it down.
You put basically a sacrificial anode,
Yeah.
so a chunk of metal
Like
that's
water.
gonna just
Yeah.
take all the abuse for you.
Well, it sounds like we have to do that one, right?
It's a good idea.
So what, generally, just in plain English, what, you know, as Julie was pointing out, we had a list before, and now this is some new projects, and I'm not sure if you have a certain expectation here, Ed, as far as what's next here.
These new projects are just the main ones that I see as high priority. But we still, like Julie said, we still have all those ones on that original list that weren't approved, so.
Yeah, and then we also have, like, Wendy Bond brought
Well,
up
haven't been yet.
projects. We also have projects at schools, as, you know, she brought up, there's some projects identified by the principal at OAS.
Yeah, one of the ones that Michael's talking about of uneven pavement, that would be taken care of with some of the drain projects. I think there's one in here for outside the 40s. Some of that pavement out there is really rough.
Yeah, I mean, that
So
one,
that would all be done when the drain work is done
and when is the drain work gonna be done?
Next time.
next summer.
This summer, okay, because that's something we worry about, you know, someone falling and
Yes.
potential liability type of issues.
Right.
And of course, the bleachers were on that list, and I assume those are the same bleachers on your list? Yeah.
And it's the same with the sloped concrete ramps between the wings at OIS. Those need to have some etching done to them again. I think the last time we did it was about 9 years ago, and it's getting smooth again from all the kids walking up and down. So,
Well, so I guess we're sort of at the point, as far as I'm concerned, we're at the point of prioritizing all of this. Again, we should have to do that all the time. And I also consider the solar and the air conditioning very important, so I'm not, Chris, you're running this, I'm not sure, if we're supposed to give direction or talk about prioritizing or what next.
Yeah, so that's next, when we're done asking any questions.
Okay.
Do you have a question, Kevin?
I do. So when we went through last October, Wendy will maybe remember, and Matt, there were some things at Wagner Ranch that I just wanted to see where they fall currently. One was the drinking fountains. Replacement of that was requested at that point in time. Have we done anything about those? Is the pressure working? Are they in operation? Because I know if you weren't at one point, do we know where that one fell on?
as far as I know, all the drinking fountains are working.
Okay.
Mark went through and made sure everything was working.
The other, and I'm mindful that one of the task force, maybe they weren't in order, but in my mind, this is my opinion, that students first was definitely the highest priority. So I'm just trying to, as much as a lot of these are, I could argue student first, there's a few nuggets I wanted to bring back to light since it's been over a year. One of the special education recommendations, so maybe the superintendent can help if you don't know this maybe. But the idea of having a little therapy or quiet room established, because there used to be a little spot for some special ed folks at Wagner to be sequestered. That was one of the requests, and I'm not sure if we're, as a district, if we work to accommodate that, if that's happening, if we've kind of worked it, because it used to be in the 5th grade pod, but so whether you don't know the answer now, it's fine, but I just want to reiterate that was a request of the site, and it seems like it might be done without any facility money, if there's just an allocation of space within the site. So, wanted to bring that one up. And then, just to reiterate the others, so that everybody's hearing this, students first, air conditioning was another large takeaway.
You still at Wagner or just general?
This is
Okay,
general.
Overview.
Refurbish restrooms, which we've authorized quite a bit of that. So that's to give us kind of a snapshot of where we've come within a year. Refurbish, retrofit multi-purpose rooms, repurposing kitchen and bathrooms for collaborative space. That, I believe, for the most part, there's a couple sites that have a real NPR-driven, Sleepy Hollow being one, and there are others that they want to utilize their spaces more effectively. And basically more sharing of the financials with Pulte money. So having kind of a breakdown. I know that we've statused it on the report prior, but understanding, I guess, is there anything left on that 1.9 that's a very round figure and it's going to be spent? I think it'd be good to communicate if there is any savings there, or at least what it's.
What 1.9 do you mean?
So the 1.9 on the slide that Maureen walked us through a little bit, was it 8 completed projects, eight items down. If the 1.9 is fully actualized, because we see remaining 1.69759114,
Right.
So just understanding, making sure there's, obviously that's a big balance remaining, so I want to make sure we're clear what it's been spent on, and that that's all communicated. Was definitely something that came out of a year ago effort.
Well, is this summary something that we could post on our websites? Because that is sort of exactly what we were talking about, having a real breakdown available to the public.
The other was, for purposes of this discussion, leaving a certain amount of money in reserve for ongoing maintenance, and then continue to define equity, and then I think lastly, looking at solar and ways of saving energy and what have you. So those, I think we've continued to focus on all those, so.
And that reserve's reflected here in the 500,000, right? See that at the bottom?
Yep.
Great.
Exactly.
Okay, any other questions for Lorraine or Ed? We've got some time remaining for some discussion. There's nothing to take action on, but we're just presented a lot of updates and where we're at. Things that I see as we need to prioritize to a certain extent, or to decide if we want these things brought back to us, or I think 6 things that we just had presented: the Prop 39 stuff, solar, air conditioning, portables that we own, portables that we lease, and new projects that we hadn't seen before. So that's 6 things, yeah. So I don't necessarily have an order or what of how to discuss those, but we don't have too much time left. So someone wants to start giving thoughts on if you want to bring all 6 of those things back and where to go from there.
So, my question is, if we were to talk about the Prop 39 piece, I just want to make sure I understand it completely. If, not that we're going to take action today, but if as a board, if we have consensus on the board that we want to move forward with the Prop 39 items, I'm not clear on our cash outlay. I understand that the Prop 39 allocation from the state potentially could be $420,000 repaid over 5 years. What I just heard was that we get the first 2 years up front, so we take 420 divided by 5, whatever that is, 85, and we get 170 the first year. So do we lay all this out now and then we get repaid over 5 years? Is that how it works?
Yes, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly. So it's just an annual allocation.
Okay.
So once this plan is approved, you've already actually gotten a cash advance in the form of what's called planning grants. You actually have your first years in the bank. You haven't spent it, but it's in the bank. You're going to get your second year once this plan is approved, and then effectively every October, November, you'll get your other 60%, that other $240,000.
So the energy conservation measures wouldn't cost us anything out of pocket?
Well, as Mr. Rand said, you're going to have to advance about
Right.
240,000 of it,
But we'll get
but you'll
that.
get paid back. Yeah. So net you will not have to. That's right. Because all of your measures were significant enough in terms of energy savings that you didn't have to put cash in to get it to work.
And then if we wanted to do the exterior light replacement, that would
That
be
would be
cash out
cash.
unless we applied the 60,000.
Some of it, yeah, that's right.
And that's where, what I was bringing up earlier, if there are things that are on our list, some of those maintenance items, if we can, if it's a priority to spend things on reglazing or doors or what have you, right? If we look at making sure that we're thinking there are other opportunities, we're spending it, if we're allocating it, as a board, we want to do it, let's make sure we're thinking about how to leverage that.
Those Prop 39 dollars.
And just to be clear, it could be anywhere from that, the 16,000 is probably pretty conservative. You could get as much as another 25,000 out of Prop 39 because you're going to be getting rebates. That's cash in the form of about $23,000, so that's another chunk that you can leverage. And those rebates will also come once the system, the projects are put in place.
23 on top of 16 or total?
On top.
So for me, Chris, the Prop 39 piece is a slam dunk, just for me. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me on a number of levels, so I get that.
Let's just take, is
I
there?
agree with that.
Agree with that?
Yes.
I'd say even to the effect of let's get that fire alarm digestion happening.
Yeah, that's petition.
whether that's feasible or not, so we know what exposure that means.
Can we talk about that within the scope of the AC?
Yeah, so I mean, yeah. Yeah, because that's an AC
Sure.
thing.
But at the same time, I think what I heard is we can ask the question regardless, just to know the answer.
Yeah, but he's saying it's separate from Prop 39, right?
No, I hear that. I guess what I'm getting at is getting that, it's a priority, I'm saying, to get that going,
I agree.
regardless if we don't make decisions.
My thing is,
or
I don't
whatever.
support the air conditioning, so that's all. I just didn't want it to, I didn't want the assumption to be that it's unanimous, that
No, I hear you.
Great.
Because I'm just looking at it, if
I
there
agree.
is a,
doesn't cost
if
anything
we
to find out.
if we start talking about portable replacement too, we're starting to affect sites and do building improvements, and I don't know what else we can start navigating for the site in terms of fire alarm if we start replacing or messing around other ways too, so.
Yep.
Okay, so Prop 39, I think that's an agreement that we want to bring that back and get that working on.
We got the solar, and we got the air conditioning,
Portables.
and the
And
portables.
portables, and new projects. Let's do, we already
He
opened
just
up
said he
air
doesn't-
conditioning. We already opened
Yeah.
up air conditioning, so there's some hesitation in air conditioning.
So I'll just, since I kind of
Mhm.
spoke first on that one, I acknowledge that we get some hot days and some uncomfortable days, but personally, I don't see the return. I don't see the bang for the buck. I'm looking at limited dollars that we have, and I'm looking at getting swallowed up by a huge chunk. And what I'm really seeing is all the things we won't be able to do if we move forward with AC in its current form. So for me, it's just too much money being spent for what I perceive to be too little return. You know, in just my opinion, and my kids did not, not once in their 9 years at OUSD did they come home and say, I was so hot at school today, I couldn't learn. And in talking to parents about air conditioning, I did hear it loud and clear during facilities workshops. I remember at two specific sites, we heard parents, but it was a real small, it was a small vocal, there were 3 people that had strong feelings about air conditioning. So for me, while I value it, I think it would be great. I think it's too much money for too little return relative to the full scope of all the projects that I'm looking at for the district. So that's just my opinion.
And I actually agree with you. I mean, I do think we can do the preliminary discussion about if we're gonna trigger the $8 million, because, the difference between a $5 million and a $12 million project is $13 million project is huge. So I mean, I agree with,
I think it's 5 versus 8, isn't it?
It's 5 to 8.
Yeah, for the
5 to 8, sorry, 5 to 8. Yeah, and I think I'm in favor of asking the question to DSA whether they will do it without it, but,
About the fire one.
about the fire one.
Yeah, I think we should ask that.
But for me, I mean, even without the fire alarm, again, I'm sort of sitting where Matt is, we're 5 million, and we're looking at 8-7 left. Maybe whittle that down a little bit by taking out some gym space and stuff like that. I think the AC needs a lot more buffing, in my opinion, before we want to spend our dollars there.
So when you say buffing, are you thinking scoping, being more surgical about it in a sense, or, because I guess where I'm sitting is, I know there's a need in certain classrooms for sure, just because of where they are on a site, getting baked all day, or having asphalt, or whatever, construction type.
Yeah, I mean,
So I think there are definitely select locations
Yeah, I'm
that
talking.
are hot boxes, so to speak, compared to their neighbor. So I think what I remember hearing more so was do something about it not being sweltering for some kids versus not for others, right? So recognizing that, I think we've gotten a pretty good analysis, kind of an overview of what the temperatures are in the sites and kind of a high level, but I think, my understanding of what's available in terms of consultant and surveying, and I know that there's there's an entire group over at UC Berkeley that actually, they'll go in and they'll measure occupancy and understand wet bulb, dry bulb, the whole 9 yards of exactly what's going on in every space. So there is the ability to understand which specific rooms are gonna need the hit. And I mean, all along, that's my take, was let's apply it to where there is a true need versus just across the board, because this is a huge expenditure,
That
so.
is like such a hornet's nest to go that route. And
No, it's very scientific, actually.
Well,
It's entirely
you tell
scientific.
that
We
to
do it all,
those teachers and those parents, though, I mean, that
well, we
is-
do it all day long in all of their buildings where they work all day and all over the Bay Area. I mean, we do, in building things and analyzing existing conditions, San Francisco is a prime example. There is not a lot of air conditioning. And where there are air-conditioned buildings, they turn off at 5 because the landlord's done. So they cool their computers in a little side room, and that's about it. So there are ways in which you can very effectively analyze the space and come up with exactly what it's doing to the people in it.
But one concern is that teacher in classroom 21 has air conditioning and teacher in classroom 14 doesn't.
And that's where the data, similar,
I agree.
executive on corner south, executive on corner north, they both know how hot their offices are on any given day, and I bet you the one on the hot side is gonna definitely speak up.
So
And
Julie,
not
your view
complain
on
that the other guy doesn't get cooling.
air conditioning?
Well, I think Matt said it very well. I mean, I think it would be great to get air conditioning. I'm in favor of getting air conditioning, but I think the cost of getting it relative to all the other things that we have to get done, when I look at these things, I say, that's really like, hey, do we wanna look at a bond? Cause that's a lot of money to spend, and we have a lot of needs, and that would be something that would fit in better in my mind.
And Chris, I'm not against Tyson's approach, or, I didn't mean to cut you off. I didn't mean to, I thought you were done. You started tailing.
I'm done.
I'm not, I appreciate Tyson's perspective on it, and if we could get that specific, I wouldn't have a problem targeting, the true hotspots. And your term of buffing air conditioning, I'm comfortable with that as well. But just as far as the whole proposal.
I mean, to share a little more of my perspective on it too, the whole idea of efficiencies and how we apply when we build out these spaces is you don't put a 7.5 ton unit for a space that only needs 3 tons worth of cooling. So you figure out what your cooling need is, and then you size it appropriately. Same thing would happen for given spaces. It's basically the same thing I'm talking about. There are spaces that don't need cooling because they have a huge oak tree hanging over them, and they're never going to hit the temperature. So there are spots within our campuses that, quite frankly, just don't need it, because they're either up against a giant concrete wall that's on the earth. I mean, you name the conditions. So I think it's worth a look from a granular perspective, because I don't think the whole nut here really does it. You'd be spending money on boxes that wouldn't even be turning on in some places. So, and that's not a good use of money.
So we'll keep working on that. Let me move next to.
Oh, wait, Chris, I didn't get to say anything.
Okay.
On air conditioning. I just wanted to add that we already have rooms where there's one air conditioned and one not, when we have the portables. Yeah, the portables are already air conditioned, so we already have that situation.
No, OIS too. OIS got new rooms, that new wing by Hezbollah.
The science.
Yeah.
There is some asymmetry.
Yeah, but I like Tyson's perspective about evaluating where we need it and trying to streamline it and see what we can get the cost down to.
Okay, solar? What are our views on solar? You wanna bring that back?
Yeah, but I think we need to determine the air conditioning piece, because that will impact the size of the system. I mean, I'm in favor of moving forward. I'm not quite sure in the rich funding model.
I think that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, I'm in favor of doing solar. I don't have a definite idea about what funding model. And I agree, yeah, the air conditioning would impact it. I would hope that we could consider trying to move us in the direction of being able to make a decision about it I don't, it feels like the air conditioning will take a long time, I don't know. It feels like it's gonna be sort of time intensive to get this refinement of what we need.
Summer 2016.
Well, it's a.
Well, not to get the project done, but just to even get an idea of what, like, the model that Tyson just described, what would that mean, and then how would that impact solar? And meanwhile, if we're waiting on the solar to know about the air conditioning, what does that do to our, you know, maybe that's necessary, but it sounds like it could slow the whole solar thing down quite a bit, so, I don't know, I just would
There's
like
not
to.
really a rush though, I mean, there's not a compelling
Well, there's
rush
not.
on the solar.
Well, I guess the other part of it is we could keep doing these other projects and use up all our money and we haven't done any solar at all. I would rather, well, I don't know. I just like to keep the conversation going. And to me, it is a priority. It was one of the top 6 things on the OIS list, and I've been hearing people talk about it for over a year. So,
Here's
So,
my question, Chris. I can't even wrap my head around a placeholder number for solar. So I'm sitting here looking, we have 8.7 left, 1.4 million portables, 0.7 for Ed's new projects. I don't even know what number to sit in my mind for a potential placeholder for solar.
Solar with
We
AC,
have
if we
a-
were paying all cash is 4.2, without AC is 3.5, and if we did a PPA, it would be 0.
So,
Yeah,
so Matt, I mean, to what I'm placeholding, I mean, I look at it like, I guess, with all of this, I have a very institutional, long view is how I'm trying to field this, so that, and then also balance it with the educational component. So, I mean, I think pursuing solar is, my take is we have to do it. I mean, our sites have a lot of sun, we're in the Bay Area. There's a huge educational and call it just environmental stewardship component to this, as well as just an institutional mindset of generate your own power. I mean, duh. It's just, so whether the AC is the right nut in terms of load that we're trying to balance, I get it. So I'm more looking at it like it's $4 million, and it's, you max your return, because this is very restricted money. You put it into this so that our general fund is freed up of that, and it's freed up the fastest, most efficient for as long as possible. That's my mindset on it, so that you've got more flexibility with that $280,000 you're paying PG&E every year, whenever that starts.
Can I comment on the sizing question that you're raising, because it's important to
Sure.
understand? You're absolutely right that you do not want to finalize your solar sizing until you've made specific decisions around, now that you've decided on this Prop 39, right, there's going to be savings. You saw that there's savings associated with that in terms of kilowatt hours. If you did the exterior lights, there's savings in terms of kilowatt hours. And we want to build that into the model. And the same with the AC. So you would not, do your final sizing analysis. What I gave you is a pro forma based on where you're at today. You would finalize that at that last point when you've made those decisions around how much, if any, AC you're going to add to your load and what the actual impact of these other measures is. You can start the process of project development, today, tomorrow, and not pull the trigger on that sizing until you're ready to put that RFP on the street and say, here's our load profile that we want you vendors to bid against. And even then, and we've had this happen, we've had a vendor come back and say, you eliminated certain meters, and this wouldn't be the case here, but maybe it would come up. You eliminated certain meters because they're too small or they're restricted in some kind of way. We have this solution that is new to the market, and we're going to suggest you add another 100 kilowatts to your system. So there is an opportunity to move around where that sizing is till pretty late in the process. Now, once you define the project scope at that end, then you're going to build what you're going to build. But even then, we have a district in the Central Valley that we built a solar farm. It was a ground mount solar farm to serve both a high school and a middle school. They had an influx of students, added a bunch of portables, and their load went up. And solar is pretty modular, and it's very inexpensive to just add another row of panels to that farm to meet to that load. So you're not constrained forever on the size of it.
discuss. So solar, I think we continue to just,
It sounds like we have consensus to try to move forward on it more.
Yeah, I mean, one of the critical things is gonna be siting on all of our sites, right? That discussion, just trying to, I mean, whether it's 30 square feet or 20 square feet in a given spot, whatever, I mean, it's location on campus, how it's shading, what it's doing, I mean, that has to get advanced to get some traction regardless.
portables? We have these own portables. What's our view on,
Well, again, I remember in one of our discussions on portables, reflecting just on what Tyson was talking about, you know, getting the PG&E bills out of our general fund, is the advantages of getting all the costs, the yearly annual costs out of our general fund that are associated with portables, out of the general fund to free that money up for other uses. So personally, I'm in favor of spending the 1.4, both to buy out the lease portables and the 873 on the portables owned by the district, as well as I like Ed's recommendation of spending the 66,000 to upgrade 7 portables at 9,400 apiece. So I like the whole portable package myself.
other thoughts?
Yeah, I don't feel ready to make that decision at all. I'm not crazy about the portables, even the new ones are nice, yeah, but, I don't know, this is a lot of money to spend just for more portables.
What if you thought of them as classrooms? Does that change if you think of them as classrooms?
What is the yearly burn on our rentals? Wasn't it 100 and?
So it's supposed to be like a 4-year payment.
That's what I remember.
Well, I don't like making that kind of decision in a meeting like this, because we only just got this handout now, and I don't have the one I had before, and I'd like to go look at some of them, and I don't know, I'm just not ready to make that kind of decision.
Okay, other thoughts?
Well, I guess as much as I'm a fan of actually improving the facilities that we have to get them to more robust learning environments. I recognize that for my entire term I've been talking about why are we paying so much in lease portables. So in those 4 years we could have probably done quite a bit of damage. So I'm being consistent in general. I'm going to go with, I'm happy to buy these things out because I think we'll have a use for them in some capacity on our district. We have 5 school sites, 14 portables. Even if we build and do bonds or go crazy on school sites with new something, 14 portables will get utilized for all kinds of different art, extra rooms, you name the need. It's flexible. The district has them then in case enrollment does go up in the next 10 years in some way, shape, and form, and we've improved facilities in that time frame. We still have the flexibility of portables that we own versus another $1 million down the road at 100 and something a year for 10 years. So I'm for that. I think
You're talking about the second page.
I'm talking about the leased. Just stop the bleeding on the lease.
That's the second page.
And then the first one, I mean, I guess the 873, I think there's a broader discussion that should be had, and while I feel for the Del Rey students and staff that have to persevere, those definitely well paid for and utilized 1960s portables. I think there's a bigger discussion that needs to happen with all of our 1950s facilities before we commit almost $1 million. I like the idea of replacing those, but I don't know that replacing them with a portable is the right solution in my opinion.
Well, I agree with Tyson on the least ones. I mean, it does make sense, and that's what I thought we did.
We had consensus on that before.
Consensus on that, right. You know, on the owned ones, I mean, I don't know why the prefab discussion has sort of dropped off our radar. You know, I would have liked to see those, I know that would be obviously a bigger dollar amount, but it would have been nice to be able to take a look at that.
But
And
they
I'd
were
like
like,
to do something.
weren't the green ones like $250 a piece or something?
Well, it depends, but there was a cheaper. So, you know, yeah, I want to replace all those portables that are
Mhm.
old. I'd like to be able to compare the cost of replacing them with new portables with prefabs.
And I will just say for my piece, yeah, we've already gotten consensus on the lease, but, that makes a lot of sense to not pay that out of the general fund, like you said before. For me, improving the old portables, you know, it's been a 20-year history in this district of having these 1960s portables, and the thought has always been, you know, when we sell Pine Grove, when we finalize the Pulte deal, we'll have money to deal with these pretty terrible portables. And so I think we should, in some fashion, do something with this first page. I think some of these classrooms are really poor. And I agree, you know, a prefab building, I think would be better than a new portable, but
Can we have it brought back to us with,
yeah, I think we should, yeah.
with a
So
comparison on the prefabs and maybe with what a prefab would look like versus
let's
a portable?
continue the discussion on the first page, and let's hopefully get some action on the second page. And then, you know.
One question there, Chris, is
Yeah.
there, maybe better for Ed, is there a reason to put off, no, there's no reason to put off handling the buyouts of the current lease portables, working in concert with the first page? No, I've answered my own question, thank you.
So in the negative 1 minute left, the new projects list. Does anyone have any particular issues with that, or should we, you know, sort of bring these back for action?
I mean, I'd like to see these in context with all outstanding projects.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard loud and clear, you know, Del Rey wants their school painted.
Yeah.
Period, end of discussion. I'm not saying that means we have to do it, I'm just saying, while I think Ed should have the loudest, clearest first voice on new projects, I think he is the guy, as far as it knows our sites best and where our priorities should lie. I'd like to see these new projects in the context of all outstanding projects.
Okay.
I think you should consider the sewer window that we're on.
Yeah, I was gonna move there, yeah. So, is that other thoughts on that? as
Well, yeah,
far
so
as-
I guess to develop on that even a little more is, you know, replace some of the board-approved authorized projects already, like clear story window replacement, upper NPR window replacements, scanning here. I mean, those window, where we're doing it for safety and for other reasons, you know, if since there are significant dollar amounts, I mean, right there. Also repair and replace hallway roofs, no, that probably doesn't work, but, my thought is the 369,920 for a clear story and the NPR windows at Del Rey of 49,250, there's $400,000 plus right there that I'm sure our 16,480 could be leveraged against. Because there's not much, I'm sure, return on the $400,000 just in terms of upgrading windows, but I'm wondering if the percentage, at least understanding that, will that help? Or can it be applied there? Since we've already authorized those. And how that fits into the navigation of the next steps in that regard. So.
Okay, so we'll bring the new projects back and sort of in a broader context. Do we have consensus on the item 28 that we're obligated to pay anyway? I think we should, I'll say that, I think,
Sewer project.
I think it requires a,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I assume that has to come in on a consent calendar or something.
Yeah, we'll approve it as consent, so we'll bring that back as consent.
And we'll get, I'm sure we'll get 3 bids in all 9 yards on that kind of thing, because there's plenty of cathodic protection guys out there.
The sewer company's already bid it out.
Oh, they bid it?
They bid.
Oh, I got it.
They've done it?
So we don't, so they're contracting or doing it.
Yes.
This is their
Mhm.
charge
This is
to
like
us.
their bill.
So it's not really an estimate.
It's a very
This
firm
is their
estimate.
bill.
It's a very firm estimate.
At least they got a round number there. No change.
Okay. Is there anything else you need from the board tonight, or we're at our 9 o'clock?
I'm very impressed.
I just want to double check on the bringing back of all the projects, new projects, priority facility projects, and the ones that we haven't touched yet, would all be brought back under one consideration, so to speak, as to
I don't think we need, I don't think that's what I don't think we need to reapprove what we already approved.
No, not what you already
No,
did.
the things that.
Outstanding
already
projects, 21 through 27, bring back in the context of our,
all the un-
basically our
That's what I'm saying.
master facility plan that we didn't approve.
I
And we can
think
look at that.
understanding the remaining budget though, within that context is important.
Yeah.
And if there is any savings anywhere that isn't allocated or.
And then the other, I don't want to devote a lot more time to it, but I don't know if we skirted around this or not, but the discussion of more granularity on the AC, what I'll call, for lack of a better thing, temperature studies. I know Rick did temperature studies and
Yeah.
conclusions.
And there is data that we have related to your question that we can provide if you, before you go off and get another study.
Room by room data.
So I
Well, sampling data, yeah, but more granular
think the
than,
board would like, before we commit to a $5 or $8 million project, I think we want to have some more discussion about scope and possibly more surgical approach
To AC,
to AC.
temperature studies or the whole topic.
I think the whole topic.
Yeah, I don't think we need more temperature studies. We need to know how can we do AC, more streamlined fashion.
Well, I guess I have a slightly different opinion. I think we need to understand what data we do have and how.
Well, he probably
we
has
can
got
bring back at
data.
least the first pass.
Agreed. So I think getting an understanding of
That's what I
what we have and then a recommendation on a next step to be very focused with our application of the money would be my.
Yeah, and I think the board is in consensus that $5 or $8 million is too much, so we need to, our bang for that buck is not high enough for us to spend. Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move we adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
I.
Meeting adjourned.